This is a Media Lab podcast. Welcome to Putting It Together, the podcast that goes through the entire body of work of Stephen Sondheim, show by show and song by song. My name is Kyle Marshall, your self-described Sondheim expert. So a few things up here at the top. Hi, everyone, by the way. So based on how the audio was recorded on the other end, my voice tends to get a little bit echoey, only in a few spots. I've cut it out of like 98% of the episode, but sometimes when we were kind of talking at the same time, you'll notice that my voice specifically gets a bit echoey. So I don't think it's a thing that's going to ruin the episode, but just be aware that that is going to happen. I am talking with Celina Reynes here this week. She was here last for the episode But Underneath and had a great conversation. So I wanted to bring her back to talk about a different song. This one, of course, You Must Meet My Wife. Perhaps, no, I'll go out and say it. I think it's the funniest song that's in this entire show and might be a good example of Sondheim being able to write funny songs. He often criticizes himself, saying that he can't write funny very well. But I think this proves him wrong, that when he's given good material, that he absolutely can. I want to wish everyone a great new year. This episode is going to go up 2 days before New Year's. And I don't know if you've been able to hear it in my voice in these intros and outros here lately, but I am feeling a bit depressed here at the end of the year. I mean, the days are getting longer here, which is nice, but I do get that, seasonal sadness. I am kind of just a depressed person by nature, as you might assume. But it's just been a bunch of things that have been piling up on each other, like Christmas was weird this year. We got this huge dump of snow in Calgary, which has made it incredibly difficult for me to get anywhere, specifically the parking spot that's supposed to be behind my condo, which I still can't get to because I will get stuck. There was a COVID scare that I came across. So all of this is not been great to end off the year 2020, but it reminds me of this episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of all things. I don't know how many people out there actually watched that show from the 90s and early 2000s. But basically, there's this episode that goes into this alternate universe because of an ancient wish being granted. It's a fantasy show, so you have to kind of accept these sorts of things. And so in this alternate universe, Buffy realizes that if she destroys the amulet, then her entire existence will end and the real reality will come back. And so it's this character Giles, her mentor, who eventually has this amulet, and I think he has this rock that he's going to smash it with and, end this reality. And the demon that has been controlling this new reality basically exclaims like, how do you know that it's going to be better after you destroy this? And there's a beat that Anthony Stewart Head does, the guy who portrays Giles, and he just goes, because it has to be. And then he smashes it, and then the reality ends, and we go back to our original timeline. I kind of feel that that is how we're ending this year, where we're being told about vaccines, we're told about how things are going to go back to normal sometime like the next year. That might be a little bit too optimistic, but regardless, I think we're getting to that point where we're just staring at somebody across from us and being like, how can you be optimistic about the future? And we need to be like, because we have to be. It has to be better than what this last year has been. Anyways, if you'd like to support the show, you can always do that for free by rating and reviewing this podcast on whatever podcast app that you use. Algorithms are this weird thing, but it does seem to help out the more reviews and ratings that I get. By the way, I think I got 4 this past week. So thank you for all the new people who have been leaving reviews. It's been really, really appreciated. Of course, if you'd like to help out monetarily, which will only help to grow and make this show better, you can do so over at our Patreon page. Please do not donate if that impacts you negatively financially. This week, I believe I do have some bonus audio from Celina and myself before we even were technically recording that I'm going to put up there. Also, I do realize I've failed to do the video for certain tiers over there for the last 2 months. So I'm planning a big, long video to to upload so that it feels a little bit more substantial. Huge shout out though to the God That's Good tier over on Patreon. I'm calling them the Holy Triumvirate still. That's Jack, Todd, and Barry. Once again, you can go and help out by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. And now it's time for Plodding Along. Plodding Along is a part of the show where I fill you in on what's happening in the plot of the show. During the song Remember, Frederick is with his young wife Anne, and they're watching Desiree Armfeldt act in a play. Anne believes that Desiree and Frederick are still in love with one another, so she runs out of the theater. Frederick, rather than go and console his wife, instead goes to meet Desiree, where he talks about his wife. And then after they sing this song, You Must Meet My Wife, Desiree agrees to have sex with Frederick because his wife won't. They're just really good friends. Let me go thank some sponsors, and then when we return, it'll be me talking about You Must Meet My Wife with Celina Reynes. Putting It Together is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. The Alberta Podcast Network promotes and supports Alberta-made podcasts and connects their audiences with Alberta-based businesses and organizations. This episode of Putting It Together is brought to you by the Calgary Foundation. Whether it's funding anti-racism programs, addiction recovery, or food hampers for the hungry, for 65 years, the Calgary Foundation has proudly supported the charitable community to address some of Calgary's biggest challenges. Now, during this period of unprecedented urgent needs, Calgary Foundation renewed its commitment to building a healthy, vibrant, giving, caring, and resilient community. If you're a registered charity looking for a grant, a professional advisor creating a giving plan for your client, or a donor wanting to give back to community, discover a wealth of resources at calgaryfoundation.org and learn more about their work through Calgary Foundation's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. This week we're also brought to you by ATB, and I want to tell you about ATB's new podcast, The Future Of. Join Todd Hirsch, ATB's Vice President and Chief Economist, as he connects with special guests who offer unique and useful perspectives about the future. Explore how our economy and communities can not only brace for change, but embrace the opportunity it creates. From the future of women in business to the changing nature of work itself, The Future Of helps us understand what's coming and what we need to do today to get the tomorrow we want. Featuring 2 episodes each month plus bonus episodes, The Future Of includes interviews with top community and business leaders from Alberta and around the world. Subscribe to The Future Of in the Apple Store, Google Play, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. And connect to ask your questions about the future by emailing thefutureof@atb.com.
Lightens my sadness, she livens my days, she bursts with a kind of madness my well-ordered ways, my happiest mistake, the ache of my life.
Celina Reynes, thank you so much for joining me here again.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast and I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for saying that. I mean, you've been here before. So I want to jump right into the question of this show in particular. So A Little Night Music. When was your first introduction to A Little Night Music?
Well, I got on a Sondheim kick, I guess about 2 years ago, because I had started writing my own musical. And I had experienced a lot of his musicals before, but I had never watched A Little Night Music. So I watched the version that was on YouTube like 3 times. And then went back and watched the film, the Bergman.
Oh, yeah. Smiles of a Summer Night.
Yeah. And, it's just kind of my comfort musical now. So I'm really excited to be on this season. Why
do you think it's become a comfort to you? Like, what is it about this show that brings you back?
I mean, part of it is the themes, right? Like it feels like there's depth, but it also feels light at the same time. I mean, I love the characters as well, but I think, the more that you listen to something, I was attracted to the music and that's why I listened to it so much. And I think the more you listen to something, the more comfortable you are with it. And now it's just, And the waltz time also has like very smooth. I'm articulating this really poorly.
Well, no, I mean, I think what I love about the music is that once it's pointed out to you, yes, you can start to pick up on it. But I don't think it's like every song sounds like a waltz either. Yes, it's all in triplets and all that sort of thing. But there's something to that. Maybe it's just like some mathematical part of my brain just locks into that a whole lot. But because for whatever reason, and I've said this multiple times on this season here already, But this is like my go-to if I just want to listen to something.
Yeah, well, humans love patterns, right? So I think that, there's something on a subconscious level. We hear that and we notice how the whole score kind of flows together and is united by that. And it just, feels attractive to our ears.
Yeah. Now, the song we're going to be talking about here today is You Must Meet My Wife. And so I am contractually obligated to do this only once and one time only. So I got into this hysterical fit at 1:00 this morning as I was going over the score again, because all I could think about was Borat singing this song, right? So he meets my wife and like through the entire thing. And like, that is so stupid. But I had to say that out loud or else that would be the only thing I would be thinking about during this recording.
Well, that means that I am contractually obligated to say that my husband and I have an inside joke that my Borat impersonation of that particular phrase is the worst that he's ever heard.
I'm glad. I will not force you to do it here on the show, but...
Please don't. He's already recorded me doing it and shared it with all of his friends, so...
But I guess more to the point, this song, to spoil the lead here for everyone, does contain one of my favorite comedy lines of all time. So I'll point it out when we get to it. But you actually, when I reached out to you, I think I brought a few songs for you to choose from. Why did you choose this one to talk about?
It's the back and forth. I think of the songs that you presented. That might have been a little Freudian slip because you prevented me from talking about the Miller Son. But of the songs that you presented, this one has the most, I don't know, it just feels like one big long joke. And I love that.
I think it's the right exact length, too. Sondheim writes about how you don't want to overstay your welcome with like a quote unquote comedy song. Like once people have laughed or understood it, like it's like, okay, it's time to get out so that people stay laughing. And I think this one does it really, really well. This song, of course, is sung by Frederick and Desiree. And so the versions of the show that we're talking about this season, I want to mention the actors who have helped perform this. So Frederick in the original Broadway cast was done by Len Cariou. In the 1995 London version, it was Laurence Guittard. And in the 2009 Broadway revival, it's Alexander Hanson. And then Desiree was performed by Glynis Johns in the original Broadway cast, Judi Dench in that 1995 version. And then the 2009 revival, it's Catherine Zeta-Jones. I think, as much as I love the original Broadway cast, I actually like how the other two versions start because they actually include a bit of the dialogue that leads into this song. And I actually do think it helps contextualize this song a little bit better than just being thrown into the middle of it if you have no outside reference for how this show is supposed to feel. Because there is a conversation between Frederick and Desiree, and Frederick essentially goes, I guess it's time that we should talk about my wife. And then Desiree asks him to boast or complain, and he says, both, I expect. And then the song kind of starts out from there. I guess I bring that up because I guess for you, do you feel like this is supposed to be taken exactly literally, or is there some sort of like playfulness that's going on with this song?
Well, I think the thing about Frederick is he just completely lacks self-awareness and self-knowledge about the situation that he's put himself in. Sure. He thinks that he's the one in control, right? And he's a little bit happy about that. I think one of the lines, we can talk about it later, but he says, she's so unlike a wife, right? He's so happy to have found someone. Oh, she's not like those other women. She's not like any of the other wives. But he's really not in control of the situation. And I think he ultimately, in talking this out with Desiree, is forced to open up and forced to kind of admit in the last part that he has no control. This actually reminds me, the mix of emotions addressed here, as you were talking about boasting or complaining or both, it reminds me of Sorry Grateful from Company.
Yeah, I think there's something to that where it's sometimes hard to communicate emotions when they're sometimes like at juxtapositions with each other, right?
Yeah, and they're also mixed in with what, you think you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of like class dynamics, I think, that goes on in this show that I don't know if I necessarily picked up on when I was a teenager listening to this for the very first time. But there's something to that where I do think Frederick is in love with Anne. She's not in love with him. I firmly believe that. But he's also like, this is how men are supposed to behave. And like, this is what I think women are supposed to behave. And she's not like that. And that excites me, but like at base level, I think he knows he's not supposed to be with her.
I don't know if I agree that he's in love. I really don't. I think he might be in lust. I think part of the issue, too, is that he wants someone to fix him. He thinks this young, bright-eyed, happy woman is going to fix him. And what he really needs is someone who can meet him on his level. Well,
that's why Desiree is the better match for him.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Okay, we're going to break this up into some smaller parts here. This is how Frederick starts. In the first stanza, he goes, "She lightens my sadness, she livens my days, she bursts with a kind of madness my well-ordered ways. My happiest mistake, the ache of my life, you must meet my wife."
She lightens my sadness, she livens my days, she bursts with a kind of madness my well-ordered ways. My happiest mistake, the ache of my life, you must meet my wife.
Anything that you want to call out just in that very first small section?
Happiest mistake. Really interesting combination of words. I think that this is like the first introduction of a motif that I noticed, him referring to her light and, the light of my life, but also, their relationship is light, as in it doesn't have any weight or substance to it. So I think that's very interesting. Light comes up several times, and also this idea of weightlessness, fluttering, and we'll get to it, fluttering and floating. But so those are the two things I noticed in that stanza for sure.
The thing that I have actually been noticing, and to be perfectly frank, I could be reading too much into this, is that I think in this song in particular, there feels like there is a bit of subtext that is so subtextual that I don't even know if it's actually there, and I'm just reaching for it. But like, I'm just looking at specifically the language where he says, the ache of my life is, yes, like heartache or like the ache of love, that sort of thing. I think if Frederick is sexually frustrated 100% in this show.
I don't think you're reading into that.
And I think that there's this sexualized language that is being thrown into here.
Oh, that's interesting. Bursts too. Yeah. We've got bursts as well.
And I've never heard any actor try and lean into those in a jokey sort of way. They usually play it very straight and stuff. But I'm I wonder if that is what Sondheim was doing, that he's using the sexual frustration as the language that he gives to Frederick in this song. Because there's some other options coming up here that are, I think, even more explicit. Yeah.
Keep that in mind, just moving forward.
I want to keep up with the rhyme scheme here, though, because I think it's interesting how it changes throughout this song. So in this first one, if I was going back to English, it's A-B type of thing, rhyming, because sadness rhymes with madness, days rhymes with ways, mistake is its own thing, and then there's the rhyming couplet at the end, life and wife. And that keeps up that way here for the first little bit, and then we'll change here very specifically when there's the back and forth between him and Desiree. Once again, I'm going to go back to my well-stated thing on this show, which is what I love about a lot of Sondheim lyrics is his ability to write rhymes that on inspection, yes, are rhymes, but doesn't sound like he's rhyming when the person is singing it.
I am about to say something that could have no basis in reality, but I think he also plays with the rhythm and the notes to make the rhymes seem seamless and also launch us into the next phrase. Like, the happiest mistake, the ache. Mistake and ache are on the same note. So it's almost like he's bouncing back and launching us into the next line, which I think is really interesting use of internal rhyme there. Like that, almost like that run on. She burst with a kind of madness, there's no space there. It's not like ended of an idea. She burst with a kind of madness. Well, as an English teacher, I can tell you that's enjambment. Oh. I love that. Fancy schmancy. That's like a $5 word that just got said on this show. I would show this to my students and teach them about analyzing poetry, but since we're talking about sexual innuendo, I think we better. Yeah. Sure, exactly. Better not. So Frederick continues on singing, she bubbles with pleasure, she glows with surprise, disrupts my accustomed leisure, and ruffles my ties. Gosh, I can never say this right because it doesn't flow off my tongue. I don't know even now quite how it began. You must be my wife, my Anne.
She bubbles with pleasure, she glows with surprise, disrupts my accustomed leisure, and ruffles my ties. I don't know even now quite how it began. You must meet my wife, my Anne.
And I realize now it's because there is a misprint in this book.
There is, yeah. I'm following on the same. My hat box, my collection of these books finally came in months later.
Well, I should send a note to the editor because, yes, there is. It says in the book, I don't even know how this began.
Well, there's that internal rhyme again with now and how.
And then just to go over that rhyme scheme here again. So like pleasure, leisure, surprise, ties, and then began Anne, right? Those are what's rhyming here. It's just very concrete and succinct. And I want to know how long it took him to get these exactly the way that he wanted them to be.
Well, I think that's why he writes lyrics and music together, right? It's so much easier to fit the musical line to the rhythm of what you're writing and to make it sound natural than to, write the music first and then try to jam words in there.
Plus, you can cheat a little bit. If you need to add like a little extra note here or there, you can. This is basically, a continuation of like the first kind of stanza there. I do enjoy some of the adjectives that are being thrown around here. She bubbles. She glows. Again, that kind of leitmotif that's going on here. Disrupts my accustomed leisure, which is such an old person thing to say. But anything that you want to mention about this section?
Ruffles my ties is just a funny image. Yeah. And, in the one performance I've seen, he just kind of almost mimes that on his chest at the same time. Also a call out again to the performers. From the 3 recordings that we're listening to, Len Cariou is the only person who does it this way, but he really rolls that R. Like, I can't even do it because I can't roll my R's. But like as with a Scotsman in my blood, I should be able to do it. But he's the only one who does it. He like really accentuates that R and the ruffles. Well, I think it's just another way to say she's a little bit of a disruption to his, adult life, right? We associate ties with work and adult life, and she's there messing it up. So, I mean, it works as just kind of a fun image, but also on a symbolic level, I think. Now, a good continuation of what you kind of mentioned there before, you mentioned how you don't believe that Frederick is really in love with Anne whatsoever. What do you think Anne's motivation is? I've been asking this to a lot of the guests about like the characters in this show and how you read them. How do you perceive the Anne character specifically? I don't know. She's such a cipher. I feel like so many different actresses could come and bring their own motivations there. I see her as a character who is still finding herself and who maybe is attracted to the idea of having a stable home life, who maybe she enjoys fixing people. Maybe that's part of the attraction as well. I mean, we just make mistakes when we're younger, right? Maybe she enjoys playing house. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, I always go back to there's that one line, which is so tragic, which is like the reason that she married Frederick, she says, is like, you look so sad. Like that was the reason why. It's like, oh, that's not a great reason to marry somebody. Right. Luckily, everything happens positively by the end of the show. So nothing bad happens to anyone. Is it positive, though? Because, no. She does end up going for his son, also sad. Yes. Maybe she just likes sad people. She's broken out of the cycle, really. I should also ask, how do you know they're sad and how do you know they're Swedish? Because I don't know if you can tell the difference sometimes. Oh, yeah, it's like Legally Blonde. It's gay or European, right? I don't know. Is it existential or is it just moody? So Frederick continues on, 1,000 whims to which I give in, since her smallest tear turns me ashen. I never dreamed that I could live in so completely demented, contented a fashion. So sunlike, so winning, so unlike a wife. I do think that I'm beginning to show signs of life. Don't ask me how at my age one still can grow. If you met my wife, you'd know.
1,000 whims to which I give in, since her smallest tear turns me ashen. I never dreamed that I could live in so completely demented, contented a fashion. So sunlike, so winning, so unlike a wife, I do think that I'm beginning to show signs of life. Don't ask me how at my age one still can grow. If you met my wife, you'd know.
So the line that I was somewhat referencing at the beginning about, like, again, this, like, sexual content, like, one still can grow. Again, this is, again, it can be read both ways. Of course, you can grow as a person. But
I thought that when I read that line, even before you mentioned it. So I don't think you're wrong there at all. I will say this is the second time he mentions a type of madness, right? Madness or demented. And also, it's the first of several times that he's going to mention her whims. So, yeah, a lot going on there. Although, in some ways, it also is just kind of repeating what he said before.
I mean, I think through what Frederick sings in this show, you do get this idea that his perception of Anne is not as a complete whole person. Because, I mean, even the very first thing in the show, it's like, now as the sweet imbecilities tumble so lavishly onto my lap or something like that, if I remember correctly. Like, he's telling her a sweet imbecile, one, and then, like, all these whims, and she, like, yeah, she's going around ruffling my ties. It's like, she's like this mad woman who's in my life, and I don't understand how she operates.
Well, he sees her as a child, and he also sees her as a sex object, and it's really awful. Well, and like you said, incomplete. And I think we're noticing in the song, he just describes her in the same way over and over and over again. But I think what we do get a sense of is, as he begins repeating these descriptions, it's like, Frederick doth protest too much. He's
right.
He's trying to insist over and over again that she's a light, sunny presence in his life. But you get the sense that he's deeply unhappy, and he can protest all he wants, but there's no really hiding that.
Well, I think that you went back and referenced he doth protest too much. I think he does bear a bit of the blame in that regard too. Like, it's not all upon the wife to make him happy, you know what I mean? But I do want to call out again some of the rhyme scheme that's going on here, because we have, give in, ashen, live in, fashion. Like, all of these are like, I wouldn't say perfect rhymes with each other, but they sound similar as they're going through. And then we get into, like, the second half where we have, like, winning, beginning, wife, life, and no grow. So we're going back to, like, the original way where the rhyme scheme was. But in the first half, it's completely different. It's almost only one type of rhyme that's going on inside of there.
Yeah, what I love about this kind of part B of the lyrics, not just the rhyme and what you're saying about him breaking some words up and combining them to create these rhymes, but he draws out the last line. So there's an extended rhythm to the last line that kind of keeps the momentum going. The first line is a certain length, and then the last line kind of breaks that pattern and extends it longer with the word contented.
Yeah, because he like how he sings it is basically so completely demented, contented fashion. Then he gets back up to speed again. So it's like it kind of swings back and forth.
It's almost like contented is an interjection that disrupts what should be the normal rhythm of the line, or what we expect to be the rhythm of the line, and it extends it further. Another instance of protest.
No, I think you're right. Like, it would actually work perfectly fine going so completely demented a fashion. But he interjects that contented in there as, like, this couching word. Yeah.
So no, not just demented. I'm contented with it.
It's like she's crazy, but I'm okay with it. It's great. Everything is fine. Okay, this is where we start to get into the back and forth between Desiree and Frederick. So Desiree has a spoken section where she says, "Dear Frederick, I'm just longing to meet her sometime." And then Frederick goes, "She sparkles." And then here's how the back and forth goes. So she sparkles, how pleasant. She twinkles, how nice. Her youth is a sort of present, whatever the price. The incandescent what? The light of my life. You must meet my wife. Yes, I must. I really must. Now, she flutters, how charming. She twitters, my word. She floats. Isn't that alarming? What is she, a bird? She makes me feel I'm, what, a very old man? Yes, no. I must meet your Gertrude, my Anne. Sorry, Anne.
She sparkles, how pleasant. She twinkles, how nice. Her youth is a sort of present, whatever the price. The incandescent, what, the light of my life. You must meet my wife. Yes, I must. I really must now. She flutters,
How charming.
She twitters.
My word.
She floats.
Isn't that alarming? What is she? A bird?
She makes me feel I'm what?
A very old man.
Yes. No.
No.
But
I must meet your Gertrude.
my Anne.
Sorry, Anne.
I always feel so bad for the Gertrudes out there to be lumped in with that name, supposedly meaning ugly.
Does it really? I didn't know about that.
I don't know. I don't know why else they would use a different name in there. I guess other than just her forgetting what the name is supposed to be.
I think this is interesting. We've entered in kind of the second of what I see as three different parts of this song. The first kind of establishing the status quo, and then there's this back and forth, which is like the joke and kind of revealing how false the first half or the first third of the song was. And, you know, the last third kind of Desiree becoming angry, right? There's a turn later where she's no longer sparring. She's actively, you know, fighting against what he's doing. So we can get there later, but I'm glad to be at this part because it's so hilarious.
No, and I agree. I think this is done so well. And we were talking before we started pushing record. I do think that Glynis Johns does this the absolute best of any of the recordings I've listened to. Just like the withering disdain she has for the stuff that he's saying just gets me every time. And this goes, and we'll probably be continuing this throughout the entire season, how for me, I think it works best if Desiree is not a great singer, because this doesn't need to be sung. This needs to be stated and like in melody, sure, but it doesn't need to be like sung with like perfect vibrato and perfect pitch. It's much more, are we getting those barbs being thrown at him? And they all work, I think, right? Because the other part of this is, for me, I think that Desiree is sort of an audience stand-in at this point, because we've heard 4 stanzas of Frederick singing about his love for this woman, and I think some of us are like, come on, like, there's no way that you're this in love with her, and I think that you are proving yourself not to be as in love with this person maybe as you think you are.
I think there's also, yes, exactly, and I think we can enjoy that as an audience too, because not only is she in some ways confronting him directly, but she's also giving us a lot of what could be read as asides. You know, and just in jokes with us, like whatever the price, her youth is a sort of present, whatever the price. I don't know if Frederick is supposed to hear that, or if he does, it's under her breath because he has to ask, you know, what and clarify.
Right. Yeah. I guess it depends on how you want to do it. I have seen this staged a couple different ways where the first part, it's only that last one, like when he asks what, that's the only one that feels like it's a complete aside. But there's other ones that kind of play fast and loose with us, where some of them she's saying it to the audience and some of she's not. She's saying it directly to him. So you can have that interplay a little bit more. There is some great rhymes that work over this, which is charming, and that gets rhymed with alarming later on into the song. Old man rhymes with my Anne. Like, so he's using these kind of fun little rhymes that like pay off way later on into the song.
And they expose the conflicted emotions for sure. And I was just thinking at the same time that they're juxtaposing these words to kind of give us a sense of the conflict Frederick is feeling, we also get sort of a juxtaposition between Desiree and Anne. You know, Anne's being described as this light, floaty, bubbly, and then we get the sarcastic Desiree immediately. Could we talk briefly, though, about why in the world would he want his former lover to meet his wife? Like, why? Is that a thing?
Frederick is a bit shy of being totally psychotic, but other than that, I mean, this is a guy who, for me, this is how I read it. I actually don't think it's as malicious as it seems on first blush. Which is, again, he's been with Anne for a year, married, is frustrated, of course. And I think it's just like, oh, like this person I know, let me take my wife to the theater. But really, I want to see this old flame of mine. And I think in his mind, he really is trying to keep them separate. And then when he goes to the play, it's like, no, like
This is really reminding me of the dynamic on the current 4th season of The Crown between Charles and Camilla and Lady Di.
Sure. I mean, it's a perfect analogy, actually. This is who he was basing it. No, but it's true. I think then when he comes to meet her here late at night, I think that he is trying to seem more upstanding in front of Desiree, even though like his ultimate aim is to get back together with her. That's
Maybe
my
he's
opinion.
also looking for someone to talk him out of it, honestly.
I think so too. I think he's really trying to he wants someone literally to say, you should not be with her. Stop being with her.
But then, of course, when she gives him that, he still protests.
Well,
Frederick, not the brightest. What is he? An accountant? A lawyer?
Lawyer, I
not
think,
the brightest lawyer in the firm.
He is not. No, he is. He's a bit of a fool in some cases. So Frederick continues on in what is, in my opinion, the weirdest lyric in this entire show. But she loves my voice, my walk, my mustache, the cigar, in fact, that I'm smoking. She'll watch me puff until it's just ash. Then she'll save the cigar butt. Bizarre, but you're joking.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but is this a case where a cigar is a cigar or where a cigar is a...
Well... We could ask a couple of presidents about it, I'm sure. But she dotes on your dimple, my snoring, how dear. The point is she's really simple. Yes, that much seems clear. She gives me funny names like old dry as dust. Wouldn't she just? You must meet my wife if I must. Yes, I must.
She loves my voice, my walk, my mustache. The cigar, in fact, that I'm smoking. She'll watch me puff until it's just ash. Then she'll save the cigar butt.
Bizarre, but you're joking.
She dotes on
Your dimple.
my snoring.
How dear.
The point is she's really simple.
Yes, that much seems clear.
She gives me funny names,
Like?
old dry as dust.
Wouldn't she just?
You must meet my wife.
If I must. Yes, I must.
Well, so yeah, let's go back to that first bit a bit. I mean, the way that I've seen it performed is that there is a joking nature to that lyric in particular, that he is actually joking in this case. But in some of the recordings I've heard, that doesn't always play that way, where Desiree seems like, this is weird what you're talking about that she does. Please tell me you don't save your husband's cigar butts.
Is there a purpose to it? Does she smoke it afterwards?
What is the... Yeah, no, I don't know. I have no idea.
Fun fact, I won some cigars in an auction literally 2 days ago.
And did you smoke them or no?
Not yet, but I'm sure my husband will want to save the cigar butt.
Of course.
I'm joking.
like a totally normal person, they will save the cigar butt. So I don't know what works for you. Like, again, I think he's joking in this one and it's supposed to be played off as one. But what do you think?
I don't know. It's such an absurd line. Part of me thinks that Sondheim just wanted to rhyme mustache and justache, that he's been saving that rhyme for decades, and he saw an opportunity and he seized it. That's part of what I see.
I love that idea. That was like, finally, my time has come. I can get this out of my brain. Yeah. There's actually some great little rhymings here where, like, dimple rhymes with simple. How dear rhymes with seems clear. Wouldn't she just, of course, is dry as dust. So there's some fun little wordplay that's going on here for sure. It's just that first part. It's always confounded me from first listen. It's like, if that's supposed to be meant literally, that is the weirdest thing she could possibly be doing in her entire life.
Do we have any historical context? Like, is this like a I don't know. They did weird things back then. I feel like they saved locks of hair and strange little probably their toenails. Like, is there some historical context for that? Do people save, like, is that a thing that's done? Maybe I just have a blind spot.
I just typed in cigar butts into Google, and that was a mistake. So, well, I don't see anything obvious.
I'm getting Warren Buffett's cigar butt lesson.
Nothing that I can see. So I don't know. Yeah, anyways, it's weird. Because that, honestly, again, some things I sometimes refer back to, like, the original Bergman film. This is not in the original Bergman film at all. So... No idea what's going on there. Let's go to the ending of the song here then.
Oh, well, Warren Buffett, in cigar terms, a mostly used butt ignored by others, but with a few risk-free puffs left. So apparently it's Warren Buffett's investing strategy. He advises spotting companies that are slightly undervalued I mean, maybe this has to do... I'm reading way too much into this. I guarantee this is not the motive behind it. I'm pretty sure it's he wanted to rhyme mustache.
I don't know. I think Sondheim was on the bleeding edge of like investment strategies the Buffett way back in 1973.
Wait, but hear me out, though.
Yeah.
If she's someone who saves a cigar butt because she thinks it has the last few good puffs left, maybe that's what she's doing with Frederick. She's trying to save this old man... Thinks he has a few good...
a few good puffs left, yeah. I like it. I'm going to say it stands. I've
assigned meaning to the chaos.
I love it. Here's how Frederick ends this off. A sea of whims that I submerge in, yet so lovable in repentance. Unfortunately, still a virgin, but you can't force a flower. Don't finish that sentence. She's monstrous. She's frightened. Unfeeling, unversed, she'd strike you as unenlightened. No, I'd strike her first. Her reticence, her apprehension, her crust. No, yes, no, Frederick, you must meet my wife. Let me get my hat and my knife. What was that? I must meet your wife. And then they sing together, yes, you must. And she says, yes, I must.
A sea of whims that I submerge in, yet so lovable in repentance. Unfortunately still a virgin, but you can't force a flower.
Don't finish that sentence, she's monstrous.
She's frightened,
unfeeling,
unversed, she'd strike you as unenlightened.
No, I'd strike her first.
Her reticence, her apprehension.
Her crust,
no.
Frederick.
You must meet my wife.
Let me get my hat and my knife.
What was that?
I must meet your wife.
Yes, you must.
So I will say, my favorite comedic line in this entire show is, she would strike you as unenlightened. No, I'd strike her first. Which I did not even get the very first time I listened to this back as a teenager, but became, when I finally clued into that, like on my third or fourth listen, I was like, oh wait, that is like hilarious. I've always loved that line ever since.
I gotta say, I don't love this look for Desiree. I can't tell what her motives are, but I don't like that she's shaming, basically saying, oh, she's a monster for not having sex with you. Don't love that.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing again, going back to the Berkman film, like the Desiree in A Little Night Music is actually quite different than the Desiree that appears in the original, because Desiree in the original would not say this at all. She would be like, I suffer no fools, like, you're being weird, I'm with somebody else right now, like, make a choice and stick with it. Don't come to me being annoyed. And Desiree here is a little bit more willing to support Frederick in his delusions. What else do you want to call out about this section?
Well, for the life of me, I can't figure out what he meant to rhyme with, but you can't force a flower. I feel like the idiom is you can't force a flower to open, but that wouldn't really work with a rhyme.
You know what? I don't even know if we're meant to know what he's supposed to rhyme it with, because going back to the rhyme scheme, no,
we have to rhyme A-B.
Right. There's a missing line is actually what's going on there, because technically the one that says flower should be like the standalone isn't rhyming with anything, and then a rhyming couplet after it. So this is like
this is the B part of the lyrics. So it's like the 1,000 whims to which I give in since her smallest tear turns me ashen. It's that a sea of whims that I submerge in, you know?
Yeah, right. You're right. Yeah. Regardless, yeah, I don't know. Like, you can't force a flower to bud or to, like, I don't know what he would want to actually say there. Something that, like, the romantic poets would write in because they loved, like, comparing virgins to flowers, like, all the time, it seems. That being said, again, going back to this, like, language he's using, he's now going very, I find, like, biblical with, like, repentance and virginal and...
Oh, yeah. It's almost like a baptism.
So. Right. Yeah.
A sea of whims that he submerges in.
This is where we get into some really great rhymes, which is like, she's frightened, rhymes with unenlightened later on.
Crust is interesting. Like, it could feel forced as a rhyme, but I believe it. Like, I believe it coming out of her mouth as like a metaphor, and I think it works.
What do you see that as meaning, though? Why does Desiree yell her crust at him?
It's like a hardened edge. She's on a tear, really. She's, unfeeling, right? Monstrous. It's Desiree seems to think, well, she's doing this on purpose. She's doing this in a kind of sneaky way. She's like, does she want money? Like, why in the world did she marry you if she doesn't want to have sex with you? And, in contrast to Frederick, talking about her being soft and light and floaty, like crust has this kind of hard connotation.
Yeah.
So
this whole last part is, I think, gets to a great finish, because we kind of already mentioned this here about her aside, like, let me get my hat and my knife. That is the part where he's like, what was that? It's like, oh, I must meet your wife. It's like the classic comedy bit. It's like, let me just say something that rhymes with what I said, and you'll believe me that that's what I was trying to say in the first place. So overall, like, what is your interpretation of this song in relation to the rest of the show? Like, is this one of your favorites, top 5, middle 5? Like, where does this fall for you?
Well, I don't think we ever get enough opportunities to see Frederick and Desiree interact. So I think it does play a really important role in establishing their dynamic together. They can finish each other's sentences, literally, and they have good back and forth. And she sees through a lot of what he's doing. And, at first she isn't confrontational. She's going along with it, but eventually she stands up to him. So I think it positions them as kind of these equals, which happens in the end. They say the same line together. They eventually get on the same page. But I don't know. It also, there's so much subtext here. I feel like what's really brilliant about it is it gives so much opportunities for the actors to bring their own interpretation to the characters. Yeah. I think that's what's really nice about it.
And it's a great crowd pleaser. Like, this is a nice comic song. Like, we've had essentially 3 other songs already in the show that have given us insights into some characters, and we've had the chorus come out and sing about like their past love affair sort of thing. This is the first time we're getting like a little personality, I think, thrown into these songs a little bit, and it's funny and it works, and I think all the jokes land really well. So I've always enjoyed this song quite a bit from this show, so I'm a big fan. Now, you were mentioning again, I think before we actually pushed record, that you have, of course, heard the original Broadway version, but are there any other versions that you think work really well or that you have favorites of?
Oh, gosh. Like I said, kind of at the beginning, I tend to watch the same full production that's on YouTube over and over and over again. That's
the 2010 opera version, New York opera version?
The New York opera, yeah. I don't know what year, but yeah, so I tend to watch it over and over again. I haven't seen many other versions, so I can't say which one's my favorite.
You've heard the Bernadette Peters.
I have heard the Bernadette Peters.
She took over for Catherine Zeta-Jones in the revival. So.
I've got to say, I briefly listened to her performance of it, and what I didn't like about that is there's this throwaway line. Right. That's we talked about it being an aside. Let me get my hat and my knife. It's an aside. Bernadette Peters sings it out to the heavens. She's like, let me get my hat and my knife. It's not subtle at all. And, I think that's one of what you were saying is that, if you have too good a singer in this role, they're going to lean on that and it doesn't have the same conversational impact. It's
weird how in this show that the original actress that it was written for has left such an impression for the remaining revivals that have happened, because Sondheim had to write for a very specific vocal range. I find that sometimes people try to sing her lines too much. And it's like, it's not that you're singing badly. It's just, I just don't think it fits with what we need here. It doesn't need to be sung out. It's like, don't sing out Louise is what I want to tell people. When I should have been, brushing up on this song so that I could have a good conversation with you, I was listening to Sister Suffragette. Oh, yeah, from Mary Poppins. She's great in that. I love it. Yeah, Glynis, who, by the way, is still alive, if anyone wants to know. I think she just celebrated her 90-something birthday here. 97. Also, fun fact, her very last film role was in the 1999 film Superstar, the Mary Catherine Gallagher character from Saturday Night Live. That is her last film role that she's ever been in.
I have never heard of that, but I might just go through her entire...
Yeah. It's not a good movie, to be honest with you, but she does a good job because I find old Hollywood actresses just have a certain energy to them that I enjoy. Well, Celina, thank you so much for joining me here today. I think I asked you this last time, and now I can't recall. If people wanted to stay in contact with you, is there a way to do that online?
Oh, gosh, there used to be. But then I watched The Social Dilemma and had a little bit of a meltdown and deleted my personal Instagram, which, by the way, was my full name. My handle was my full name, and I'm never getting that back. So whoever made that documentary/propaganda film is in my bad books. No, there's nothing I really want to plug. If you want to listen to some music from my own musical, you can follow that project on Instagram at MeTooMusical.
And how's that progress going?
It's going great. You know, as great as it can go in a pandemic. We had a few kind of online readings of it, and the first act is done, and we've had a good time with it. So
I look forward to seeing the progression of that show as as it continues on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again.
Okay, have a good one.
Thank you for listening. You can send emails to puttingittogetherpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow Sondheim Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And you can support the show on Patreon by going to patreon.com/puttingittogetherpodcast. Thank you to the Alberta Podcast Network, to the Calgary Foundation, and to ATB this week. Putting It Together is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts from. Consider subscribing so that you never miss an episode. Next week, we'll be talking about liaisons. Why do I feel a sudden urge to eat raisins? As always, a big thanks to the great Chris Taniguchi, who designed the podcast artwork, and to Nick Driscoll for composing our theme music. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Yes, I know. Goodbye for now.
So. Well, I think it's time to talk about my wife, don't you?
To boast or complain?
Both, I expect.